It was just another cold winter evening in Ohio. The snow had been falling all day, blanketing the small town in a quiet stillness that felt almost eerie. She stood by the side of the road, her breath visible in the frosty air as she waved at passing cars. One car slowed down, a beat-up sedan driven by a man who looked like he'd seen better days. He pulled over and rolled down his window. "Need a ride?" he asked, his voice warm despite the chill. She hesitated for a moment but nodded. What choice did she have? Her car was broken down miles away from home, and no one else seemed willing to stop. Little did she know, this simple act of kindness would change her life forever, and 2 years later she'd learn exactly who her savior really was. Her name was Emily Carter, and she wasn't much to look at, just an ordinary woman trying to make ends meet in a town where opportunities were as scarce as sunshine in December. She worked 2 jobs, studied part-time, and spent most of her days dreaming of something more. But for now, survival came first. That night, as she climbed into the stranger's car, she didn't know his name or where he was headed. All she knew was that she needed to get home before the storm got worse. The man driving introduced himself simply as J.D. He spoke with a soft accent, his words calm and reassuring. There was something about him, something genuine, that put Emily at ease. As they drove through the snow-covered streets, J.D. asked her questions about her life, her dreams, her struggles. It wasn't prying, it felt like he genuinely cared. And so she opened up, telling him about her plans to go to law school someday, even though it seemed impossible given her circumstances. By the time J.D. dropped her off at her apartment complex, Emily felt like she'd met someone special, a rare kind soul in a world full of indifference. She thanked him profusely and promised to pay it forward someday. Little did she know, this encounter would come back to haunt, or perhaps save, her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Life went on for Emily after that fateful night. She buried herself in her studies and work, pushing forward with the same determination that had kept her going all these years. But 2 years later, everything changed. One day, while working late at the diner where she waited tables, a group of men walked in, dressed sharply in suits, their presence commanding attention. They sat at her table, and though they didn't say much, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One of them asked her casually if she'd ever heard of J.D. Vance. The name rang a bell, but she couldn't place it immediately. When she mentioned the man who gave her a ride during the snowstorm, the man smiled knowingly. "You might want to read up on him," he said, cryptically before leaving a tip and walking out. Curiosity got the better of her, and later that night, Emily did some digging online. What she found left her stunned. J.D. Vance wasn't just some ordinary guy, he was a best-selling author, a political figure, and a rising star in national politics. He had written a book about growing up in Ohio, overcoming poverty and addiction, and finding success against all odds. And here she was, thinking he was just another struggling person like herself. But why would someone like him stop to help her? Why did those men seem so interested in their brief encounter? Questions swirled in her mind, each one more unsettling than the last. It became clear that there was more to this story, and to J.D. Vance, than met the eye. The more Emily learned about J.D. Vance, the more questions she had. His story was inspiring, no doubt, rising from a troubled childhood in Ohio to becoming a respected author and politician. But there were whispers of controversy surrounding him too. Some praised him as a beacon of hope for working-class Americans. Others accused him of being overly ambitious, even manipulative. As days turned into weeks, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that her encounter with J.D. wasn't just a coincidence. She started noticing strange things happening around her. A car following her after work, phone calls that ended abruptly when she answered, and even strangers asking pointed questions about her past. It was as if someone, or something, was watching her every move. One evening, while closing up the diner, a man approached her outside. He introduced himself as a journalist, and claimed he was writing a piece on J.D. Vance. He asked her detailed questions about their meeting 2 years ago, down to what they talked about and where exactly he dropped her off. At first, Emily thought it was harmless curiosity, but his intense gaze made her uneasy. When she finally got home that night, she locked her doors and sat in silence, staring at the screen of her laptop. J.D. Vance's face stared back at her from countless articles and interviews. Who was this man really? And why did her small role in his life suddenly feel so significant? That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with thoughts of J.D. Vance and the strange events unfolding around her. She thought about the kindness he'd shown her that snowy night, how he'd taken time out of his day to help a stranger in need. Was it possible that such a powerful man still cared about people like her? Or was there something deeper at play? The next morning, she decided to reach out to him directly. After hours of searching online, she found his official contact page and sent him a message explaining their encounter and the recent happenings in her life. She didn't expect a response, but deep down, she hoped for one. Days passed without word, and Emily began to think nothing would come of it. But then, one afternoon, as she was walking home from work, her phone buzzed. It was an email from J.D. Vance himself. In it he apologized for taking so long to reply and thanked her for reaching out. He admitted that their meeting had stayed with him over the years, and expressed concern about the attention she was receiving because of it. Reading his words brought tears to her eyes. For all the power and influence J.D. Vance wielded, he seemed genuinely moved by their chance encounter. It reminded her of the man she met 2 years ago, the one who stopped to help without expecting anything in return. But the email also contained a warning. J.D. urged her to be careful, saying that not everyone shared his values or intentions. His rise to prominence had made him enemies, and some of them might use her story against him, or worse, against her. The weight of his words hit her hard, leaving her both grateful and fearful for what lay ahead. The following week, Emily received another unexpected visitor. This time, it wasn't a journalist or a curious stranger. It was someone who claimed to be J.D. Vance's personal assistant. The woman introduced herself as Sarah and explained that J.D. wanted to meet Emily in person to discuss the situation further. Excited yet nervous, Emily agreed to the meeting, which was scheduled at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. When she arrived, J.D. himself was already seated at a table by the window. He looked exactly as he did in his photos, tall, composed, with an air of authority. But there was also a warmth in his eyes that put her at ease. "Emily," he said, standing up to shake her hand, "I'm glad you came." They spent hours talking, catching up on their lives since their first meeting. J.D. admitted that he hadn't forgotten about her, and had even mentioned her story during private conversations with friends and colleagues. But he also revealed something shocking. There were people within his political circle who saw her as a potential threat, a loose end that needed tying up. One of his rivals, a powerful senator with ties to shady organizations, had learned about their encounter and was using it to dig into J.D.'s past. They believed that if they could discredit him through personal connections, they might weaken his chances in upcoming elections. And Emily, whether she liked it or not, had become part of their game. J.D. promised to protect her, but he warned her that things might get worse before they got better. He handed her a card with contact information for trusted allies who could help her if she ever felt in danger. As they parted ways, Emily realized that her life would never be the same again. She had gone from being a struggling waitress to being entangled in the high-stakes world of politics and power. Over the next few weeks, Emily tried to return to her normal life, but it was impossible. The stares, the whispers, and the constant feeling of being watched followed her everywhere. She reached out to J.D.'s allies whenever she felt threatened, and they assured her that everything would be fine, that J.D. was working tirelessly behind the scenes to resolve the situation. But then, one night, everything changed. Emily returned home from work to find her apartment ransacked. Papers were scattered across the floor, drawers had been emptied, and her laptop was missing. Panic set in as she realized someone had broken in while she was gone. She called the police immediately, but deep down, she knew this wasn't just a random burglary. Whoever had done this was looking for something specific, and it likely had to do with her connection to J.D. Vance. As she sat on her couch, surrounded by chaos, her phone rang. It was J.D., his voice was urgent, almost frantic. "Emily," he said, "you need to leave town right now. There's someone coming after you, and I don't think they'll stop until they get what they want." Before she could ask who or why, the line went dead. Heart pounding, Emily grabbed a bag, stuffed it with essentials, and fled into the night. Where would she go? Who could she trust? And most importantly, how far would these people go to silence her? The answers lay ahead, shrouded in mystery and danger. For now, all Emily could do was run, and hope that J.D. Vance's promise to protect her wasn't too late. Emily's car sped down the empty highway, headlights cutting through the darkness. Her mind raced with questions, each one more terrifying than the last. Was she running toward safety, or straight into another trap? The only thing she knew for sure was that her life had taken a drastic turn since meeting J.D. Vance, and there was no turning back now. As she glanced in the rearview mirror, she thought about everything that had happened over the past few weeks. A simple act of kindness had spiraled into a web of secrets, lies, and danger. But even in the midst of chaos, she couldn't help but feel grateful for J.D.'s intervention. Without him, she might never have realized the storm brewing around her. What do you think Emily should do next? Should she trust J.D. completely, or is there more to his story than meets the eye? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Would you run like Emily, or try to face whoever is after her head on? Don't miss out on the next chapter. Hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you're the first to know when we release the continuation of this incredible story. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.